there is a place on Earth where simply stepping onto the beach could get you killed. In 2018, a man ignored every warning, paddled toward its shore alone, and was never seen again. No internet, no roads, no hospitals. A place where outsiders are met with arrows before they can even land. It exists right now, and what happened there more than a century ago may explain why. This is the story of North Sentinel Island. North Sentinel Island sits in the Bay of Bengal, part of the Andaman Islands chain. From above, it looks like paradise. Dense jungle stretching from one end of the island to the other. White beaches, clear blue water surrounding it on every side like a natural wall. It is roughly the size of Manhattan, but instead of millions of people living in skyscrapers and crowded streets, somewhere between 50 and 500 people live there in complete isolation. Imagine stepping onto this island 60,000 years ago, before cities, before writing, before nearly everything we call civilization. Researchers believe the ancestors of the Sentinelese arrived during that distant past and never truly left. For tens of thousands of years, they survived entirely on their own, separated from the rest of humanity. They are not frozen in time. They are not living fossils. They are a functioning society that has adapted and survived on its own terms for longer than most civilizations have existed. And they have made one thing absolutely clear. They want to be left alone. In 2004, after the devastating Indian Ocean tsunami, a rescue helicopter flew over North Sentinel Island to see whether anyone needed help. Before it could get close to the shore, arrows flew up from the jungle below. The pilot immediately turned away. 2 years later, 2 fishermen accidentally drifted too close to the island while sleeping in their boat. By the time they woke up, it was already too late. The Sentinelese attacked. Both men were killed. When authorities later sent a helicopter to recover the bodies, arrows were fired at that helicopter too. The recovery mission was abandoned. The bodies were never recovered. But here is what most people never hear. It was not always like this. There was a brief period when peaceful contact seemed possible. In the 1970s, Indian anthropologist T.N. Pandit began leading carefully planned contact missions to North Sentinel Island. The teams brought gifts, coconuts, red cloth, metal tools. At first, the Sentinelese stayed hidden among the trees, watching, waiting, refusing to come close. But over time, something unexpected happened. Some approached the shoreline. Some accepted gifts directly. For a brief moment, it looked as though trust might be possible. A peaceful relationship between the Sentinelese and the outside world seemed within reach. Then the mission stopped. The Indian government abandoned future contact attempts and chose a completely different strategy: isolation. Whatever fragile trust had existed disappeared with them, and today, outsiders are met with immediate hostility. So what happened? Why did every attempt at contact eventually fail? Nobody knows for certain, but there is a clue buried deep in the island's past, and it begins in 1880 year. That year, a British colonial officer named Maurice Vidal Portman led an expedition to North Sentinel Island. His team captured several Sentinelese people, elderly men, elderly women, young children. They were taken from their island and transported to Port Blair. The results were catastrophic. The elderly captives died almost immediately. Their bodies had never encountered the diseases carried by outsiders. The children became seriously ill. Eventually, Portman returned the surviving children to the island along with gifts, as though gifts could somehow undo what had happened. Imagine being taken from the only world you have ever known, loaded onto a ship, surrounded by strangers speaking languages you cannot understand, watching the adults who came with you die one by one, then being returned home carrying diseases your people had never encountered before. What story would you tell when you got back? We will never know, but we do know what happened to neighboring tribes. The great Andamanese once had a population of roughly 10,000 people. After sustained contact with the outside world, disease, displacement, and colonial violence reduced that number to just 44 survivors. Other tribes disappeared entirely. Entire cultures erased. Not ancient history. Within living memory of people who were alive in the 20th century, the Sentinelese watched the outside world arrive, and they watched what happened afterward. Whether that history survives as stories passed from generation to generation, or exists only as a collective memory shaped by experience, The result appears the same. They made a choice. And they have defended that choice for more than 100 years. Today, a legally enforced exclusion zone stretches 3 nautical miles around North Sentinel Island. Entering it is illegal. Attempting contact is illegal. Even approaching too closely can result in serious consequences. Most people assume these laws exist because the Sentinelese are dangerous. The reality is the exact opposite. The laws exist because we are. The Sentinelese have almost no immunity to common diseases carried by the outside world. An infection that gives most people a rough week could spread through their entire population with devastating consequences. No immunity, no hospitals, no medication. A single encounter could threaten their survival. The exclusion zone is not a prison keeping them in. It is a shield keeping us out, which makes what happened in November 2018 so difficult to understand. A 26-year-old American missionary named John Allen Chau traveled to the Andaman Islands with one goal: to bring Christianity to the Sentinelese. He had prepared for years. He genuinely believed this was his purpose. Ignoring Indian law, he arranged transportation near the island and completed the final approach alone in a kayak. He kept a journal during those final days. On his first approach, a young Sentinelese boy stepped forward and released an arrow. It struck the Bible Chau carried on his chest. For most people, that would have been the end. Chau returned the next day anyway. Then he returned again. On the 17th of November 2018, he paddled toward North Sentinel Island for the last time. Fishermen, watching from a distance, saw figures emerge from the beach. They saw what happened next. They did not go closer. His body was never recovered. And like the fishermen before him, he remains somewhere on that island today. The outside world debated the incident for years. The Sentinelese did not. For them, nothing changed. We call them isolated. But perhaps isolation is the wrong word. The Sentinelese know the outside world exists. They have seen ships. They have seen helicopters. They have seen people trying to approach their shores. And after everything history has shown them, they have made their answer clear: leave. For more than a century, they have defended that answer with absolute consistency. Maybe North Sentinel Island remains a mystery, not because we cannot reach it, but because after everything humanity has done to places like it, we finally decided not to.